Whoa! Let's go. Let's go on an adventure.
I'm trying not to get political. I don't need to get angry with anybody for their political beliefs. I don't want anybody getting angry with me for my political beliefs, and I don't get political at all. I totally refrain from doing that, and I try not to use my political beliefs to sway either way. I try to stay completely neutral, and when I tell stories, I tell stories the way it is. So, however you feel about the incident that's going on right nowadays, and we'll get into that, what it is. Just disclaimer, however you feel, this is not either way, left, right, upside down, backwards. Neither way. This is this is what happened. I served in the U.S. Navy. We went on deployment. I believe the date, I can look it up, it's right in front of me. I believe the date was March 3rd of 2003. Give me 1 second, because I have it written down. Yes, it's March 3rd, 2003. That was the day we left on our deployment from San Diego, USS Nimitz, CVN 68, nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. We left San Diego and we set sail to the Middle East. At that time, this is March 3rd, at that time, a conflict was brewing. There was stuff about Osama bin Laden. There was stuff about Afghanistan, Iraq, all kinds of stuff going on. Check your history books and just see what happened. Just in case you need some help, it was George W. Bush that was president at the time. Yes. And so that's where we're going. Like I said, doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. This is what happened. We left on deployment March 3rd. Took us a while to get there, and I think it took us about a month, somewhere in April. Maybe it was March 30th, 31st. I don't remember. Again, I would have to look it up, but I don't remember the exact dates that we got to the Gulf. But I do know this. On March 20th, it was just before we got there, was when the United States invaded Iraq, and with the whole Saddam Hussein thing and all the stuff that was going on then. This was 2003. I keep saying the dates because I want to make it clear that this is when this happened. So this is after 9/11, which happened September 11th, 2001. This is a year and a half later. And year and a half? 2001, 2. So anyway, very fresh in our mind, everything that was going on. We all knew why we were there. We all knew what was going on. And I had a job to do, and I did my job. Simple as that. How that relates to today, nowadays, is the first port we went to on that deployment, and a lot of people, when they try to soften it, they'll say on that cruise. It wasn't a cruise. It was a deployment. And there's a significant difference between those two terms, especially nowadays where I go on cruises and I don't have to work while I'm on the ship. And but anyway, so that deployment, our first port was Honolulu, Hawaii. Pearl Harbor, we pulled in there. We saw the USS Arizona Memorial and some other stuff in Hawaii. I have stories about that, which will be on here, but this is not that story. This story is a little different. So our next port that we finally got to go to was Jebel Ali, United Arab Emirates. There's a port there, Jebel Ali port, and I think it was like a 30-minute drive from there to Dubai, which is one of the nicest cities I've ever been to in the world. And I've been to a lot. Um, I want to say my favorite city that I've ever been to in the world was Singapore, but after that it was Dubai. And again, there's other stories about Dubai, but this is the one specifically about Jebel Ali, that we were there. So because of the time frame that this was happening, we had just invaded Iraq. There was operations going on in Afghanistan. Um, there was terror cells and terror networks all over the world. This was the height. This is the beginning, but it was the height of the war on terror. So this was fresh in everybody's mind. They were there was lots of briefings and stuff like that. Be careful when you're out and about. You don't know who's who. You don't know if they're sizing you up for another attack on the United States, because there was attacks in the Middle East on United States vessels. The USS Cole comes to mind, which was in this time frame. It was years before that. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like, a couple days. This was before that, but this is within the same 5-year period that it's an active um, terrorist attacks all over the place. So they told us that we had to be very careful while we were over there. So when we pull into Jebel Ali, um, the first day they decided that it would be in our best interest. And when I say we, I mean the entire ship, the entire crew of the Nimitz. That includes the air wing. So, topsiders, and they were part of the crew too. So when we got off the ship, everybody was intermingling and whatnot. So they decided that the entire crew could not leave the compound or the area that we pulled into. So essentially, it was a party on the dock. Now, not 5,000 people were not fitting on this dock. They set up an area where we could all go and spread out and just kind of hang out, just not on the ship. Um, Anybody who's ever been on a big ship before just knows that there's a completely different atmosphere when you're on the ship in those tight quarters where people, and an aircraft carrier gets really small very quickly. But just getting off the ship, getting away from it, um, is a relief. So we called it the sandbox, and it really was like a sandbox. You walk off the ship, and it was almost like walking on a beach, but there was no beach water and stuff like that. We weren't jumping in the ocean or anything. Obviously, the ship pulled in there, but we weren't swimming or anything. And it was hot. It was over 100, and it was a dry heat. It was still hot. And then that sand is like dust, and it just gets in everywhere, in your nose, in your ears, in your eyes. Um, it's everywhere. So that was the sandbox, but that's not the end of the story. No, that's just the introduction to the story. I had gotten off the ship just trying to get away, and didn't know anybody. Like, I knew the people I worked with, but I didn't know a lot of people around the ship too much. It was just kind of reactor department, and that was it. So I went just kind of hanging out with them, and even in that group, I think there was like 580 sailors that made up reactor department, and that was about 10% of the entire ship. We were the largest department, but even then, like, I didn't know everybody in reactor department, so I was meeting new people, and we were just genuinely hanging out together. So we went, and there was the best thing that they could do was play softball, and at that time, I did not like baseball at all. It was slow. It was boring. I had a bad experience with it growing up. So I just didn't care about baseball anymore. That did change. Like I said, this is in 2003. Um, by 2006, my um, what is the word? My interest in baseball kind of got better, and um, that was the year the Mets almost made it to the World Series. They lost to the Cardinals in the championship round of the playoffs. But I would go to work, and somebody would leave a newspaper in the break room, and I'd flip through and be like, "Oh, the Mets won." Flip through the next day, "Oh, the Mets won." Flip through the next day, "Oh, the Mets won." After about a week of that, I'm like, let me check their record, and their record was like 9-1 beginning of the season, and they were just going off on a tear. And I'm like, oh well, that's interesting. Couple weeks later, I go and check, and they're just killing it that year. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll watch a game. So I go and I watch a game, and they ended up winning that game, and it was just fun and exciting. I ended up watching a bunch of games. I ended up going to a game that year, and yeah, like I said, they lost in the playoffs, but they were poised to win, and that piqued my interest, and I held on to that for a couple of years. I believe it was 2010. 2010. I watched or listened to about 150 games that year. Just the Mets. I knew the Mets lineup by heart. I knew the Philadelphia Phillies lineup by heart. I knew the Atlanta Braves lineup by heart. I knew all kinds of stuff, and it was just simply because I just kept watching and listening to games. It was easy because I would get out of work, and my drive home, I would listen to a game, and I'd get home and put the game on and watch that. Or sometimes when I was working night shift on my ride in, the game would be on. Or if I was on night shift, I would just go down and turn the game on 7 o'clock and listen to it then. So like it was pretty rare that year that I didn't listen to baseball. But anyway, getting back to our time in the Middle East, and specifically Jebel Ali. The powers that be, the command, the wonderful people that decided that we're going to take a bunch of sailors and put them in a box and see what happens for their safety, um, made the categorically, not the word, gigantic mistake of selling beer for $1 a can. You have a bunch of people who have been cooped up on a ship for 60 days, give or take. And in that time, they were still getting their paychecks. So paychecks were direct deposited. So everybody's bank account was full. Unless they had a family at home, back home to take care of, everybody's bank accounts were full. So they would go to an ATM, they'd pull out $200, and guess what? That's worth 200 beers. There was no tax on it. This is not only was it a foreign country, but this was the military. So all of that stuff was paid for, and they're not trying to turn a profit, and they're not, collecting taxes in a foreign country. There's no taxes. You're not paying United States tax in United Arab Emirates. So yeah, these people just would drink. So, and to do the math on this, I believe the number was 60,000 or 600,000. I have it written down. Um, it was so much beer that the average person could not possibly drink that much. So, here's actually a picture of my notebook. See if you can see that. I don't know if you see that. This was in the sandbox, and then my buddy X drew me riding a camel. So, um, yep, it's 5,000 drunken sailors. So, I found the page. Yes, it was 60,000 beers were sold that day. 60,000. you have to remember something, and we'll do some math. You didn't know this was going to be a math test today, but not everybody left the ship that day. So approximately 25% of all the sailors on the ship stayed on the ship. And then, so let's be reasonable and just say 4,000 sailors left the ship. And 60,000 beers were sold that day. Okay? That's 15 beers a person. But that's not all. Not everybody drank beer. Let that sink in. That's a lot. So what they had was a bunch of sailors who had been cooped up for 60 days and an abundance of alcohol. One of the, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to actually read it when I find it, and I'm going to insert it probably here.
The USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, as a combat vessel carried 48,600 gallons of fresh water for her crew, 475 officers and men. This was sufficient to last 6 months of sustained operations at sea. She carried no evaporators, i.e., freshwater distillers. However, let it be noted that according to her ship's log, on July 27, 1798, the USS Constitution sailed from Boston with a full complement of 475 officers and men, 48,600 gallons of fresh water, 7,400 cannon shot, 11,600 pounds of black powder, and 79,400 gallons of rum. Her mission: to destroy and harass English shipping. Making Jamaica on 6 October, she took on 826 pounds of flour and 68,300 gallons of rum. Then she set for the Azores. Arriving there November 12th, she provisioned with 550 pounds of beef and 64,300 gallons of Portuguese wine. On 18 November, she set sail for England. In the ensuing days, she defeated 5 British men of war and captured and scuttled 12 English merchant ships, salvaging only rum aboard each. On 26 January, her powder and shot were exhausted. Nevertheless, although unarmed, she made a night raid up the Firth of Clyde in Scotland. Her landing party captured a whiskey distillery and transferred 40,000 gallons of single malt scotch aboard by dawn. Then she headed home. The USS Constitution arrived in Boston on 20 February 1799 with no cannon shot, no food, no powder, no rum, no wine, no whiskey, and 38,600 gallons of stagnant water.
Everybody got a little feisty. Little, quote Austin Powers, it was Randy. So people were sneaking away in couples, sometimes more than couples, to perform adult activities with each other. And these activities occurred in some very strange places. Some of them were even public. So, yeah, Kyle, they were public. Anyway, there was the fellatio in the porta potties. There was the couples that were found in the helicopters on the flight deck. Yes, that happened. There was the rating of the other sex's birthings. And there was also the private spaces on the ship where people would seclude themselves. And yeah, we know where they were. So those things happened. There were, I don't know if I mentioned the beer can pyramids, which were quite impressive at the heights that they were. And they were empty beer cans. And then obviously somebody had to roll into them or dive into them, or yeah. One of the things that I did, see, I'm trying to remain neutral, as I said in the beginning, but one of the things that I did was I wasn't innocent at all. I was complicit in a lot of this stuff. Um, they had a wine bar, and it wasn't bottles of wine; it was boxes of wine, and we just kept going up and filling up our cups and going back and drinking wine. And eventually, we had gone back there so many times that they were like, "Dude, just take the box, just go." So I took a box, and obviously I grabbed the full one. I wasn't going to grab the one that I've been drinking out of. I grabbed the full one, and now I don't have to come back here anymore. But then, as the night was waning on, it was like, well, my box is almost empty, and I was sharing it. I didn't drink the whole thing myself, so I was sharing it, and my box is almost empty. So I'm going to go up and get another one. Well, when I went up to get another one, there was nobody at the table. So I came back with 2 boxes of wine. And these are the regular size that you would get, you know. I don't know if it's a gallon or whatever it is. Maybe it's 4 bottles, which would be a little more than a gallon, I guess. So anyway, and I was dubbed the Wine King. Now, I had already had my other nickname, and everybody knew me as Momo. But yeah, I was dubbed the Wine King, and actually later on, there was a couple of topsiders that knew me as the Wine King walking around the ship. So that was pretty interesting. Um, the reason why I'm telling you this story, and I know this is a long story and it's just kind of rambling on and on, but the reason why I'm telling you this story is, and as I kept alluding to in the beginning of my video, was this was the target of Iran's counterattack. If you see on the news nowadays, this is very recent in the last couple of days. This area that I was standing in and I was sitting in and hanging out with people was attacked by Iranian ballistic missiles. Um, one of the things my wife had said to me is, I can't get excited over seeing a place that somebody else was standing in. Like you get excited, you know, you go to some concert hall and be like, oh, Michael Jackson was on that stage, or whatever. She says, I can't get excited just knowing that somebody else was standing there, and just, yeah, it's cool, but I'm not excited that they were there. And I said to her, I'm like, just if you go somewhere and a famous person was standing in this spot and now you're standing in that spot, that doesn't get you excited. And she says, no, that doesn't get me excited. But me, on the other hand, I do get that. I've been to the original Woodstock, the field on Yatzker's farm. It's in Bethel now, and that field is still there, and you can go there and be like, oh, Jimi Hendrix was right here. What's her name? Janis Joplin was right here. Like you could point to it and say that they were there. And I was there in 1998, so I was there, and now, like, I feel like there's a piece of my history there. Anyway, in Jebel Ali, I was there. So that's the reason why I'm telling you this story. And there's a lot of people out there. A lot of my Navy friends on Facebook are posting about it. So that's why I'm telling this story. We were there. There was the baseball game. Softball, and like I said, I was a spectator at the time. There was the volleyball courts, which I did participate in. Got covered in sand. And took the bottles of water were free. So I took the free bottle of water and dumped it all over myself like a makeshift outside public shower. And then washed it down with dollar beer. I believe the prices went up the following day after this first day, but by the second day, they did allow us out of the sandbox or off of the Jebel Ali port. So we were actually able to go see the city, Dubai. Like I said, it's one of the nicest cities I've ever been to. These people, they have so much money there that they're just like, I'm going to build a building, and we're just going to make it the most technically advanced building of all time. So they built a building that rotates. I believe it's like 10 millimeters a minute or something like that. So you don't notice it, but if you go in the building and then don't pay attention for an hour, you look out and you see something completely different because the building rotated that much. So they have a rotating building. They have the indoor ski park. So you're in the middle of the desert. It's 120 degrees outside, which those temperatures were hit while we were there. I believe the record it was set in Death Valley of 129 degrees. Don't quote me on that or look it up. It might have changed since I was there, but 9 degrees off from the world record just on a Tuesday was pretty impressive, especially in because we were there not by choice. So um, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, that's in Dubai. Palm Jumeirah, if you look that up. There's also a Palm Jebel Ali. These are islands that were built to look like palm trees, and they were man-made islands, basically to increase the beachfront property of the UAE. The Palm Jumeirah, Palm Jebel Ali, Burj Khalifa. Um, yeah, so that's Dubai. It's a very nice city, and the people were nice. Now, like I said, this was 2003, the war on terror, and the I'm not saying this. The consensus was that the Arab people are bad. They are not bad, and that's what I'm trying to say right now. Um, these people were so nice. They were excited to see us. We were excited to see them. They had their different customs. Like the women did have. Some of them had the full face coverings. Like you couldn't see eyes, and I'm like, how do you see out of that? But obviously, it's close to your eye. You can see through it. But from far away, you can't see. See their faces and stuff like that. And they're walking around the mall like nothing. And I'm like, that's crazy. The mall was basically the place to go to get AC because you're outside and literally within 5 seconds of stepping outside, you were sweating. So, yeah, these people were very nice, very accommodating. The food was okay. I had pickled grape leaves, whatever that was. It was all right. Um, my big thing at the time, my big thing was Taco Bell. So they didn't have one there, and I was upset. They had the gold souk. Souk is just a term for like mall. So it was the place where you go to buy gold, and there was gold stores. And if you've never seen them, please look them up because they are impressive. Just to see a store, um, it's like Zales. Like if you go to Zales or K or whatever it is, but it's gold, and they sell all kinds of gold, and it's impressive. Please, you know what? I'm gonna put some pictures that I took while I was there right here, so that you guys could see some of these shops because they were impressive, and it was just gold as far as you could see. And it. I can't say it was pure gold because it wasn't. It was 18 karat, which is about 90% gold. But it was so rich in gold purity that the gold was actually like an orange color. It wasn't that metallic yellow color that most people associate gold with, like a 14 karat gold, which is I want to say 75%. I don't have my numbers in front of me, but um, so it wasn't that metallic yellow. It was like almost an orange color. It was very impressive to see this gold shop, and there was hundreds of them. Uh, and the negotiating was actually pretty simple because you would look for something that you wanted. I want this chain. It weighs this much, and what is the price you're going to give me for it? And the guy says, well, I'll give it to you for this price, whatever it is. And he had a sign that had the market price of gold for the day there. And you'd be like, well, I don't like that. I'm going to go next door and talk to him. And he didn't want to lose that sale, so he would lower his price. And, the guy next door had the market price on the wall too, so he knew what he was talking about. And either way, you're still haggling with them. So, yeah. So they gave us our rules for the port, and basically the way they told it to us so that we would behave was that this place was the worst place in the world, and you would be better off staying on the ship. So everybody's out to rob you. Any civilians, 90% chance have AIDS. So make sure you don't do anything like that. And they had laws about being drunk in public. Now, this was true. In the Arab countries, it is illegal or against the law to be drunk in public. But what the Navy told us was even if they smelled it on your breath, that you were subject to arrest. I don't know if that's true. I never had any run-ins with any law enforcement while I was overseas, but well, for starters, we started in the sandbox and we were drinking dollar beers. So it was also pretty difficult to actually find anything out and about. Yes, you go to a hotel, they had the hotel bar and they're serving alcohol, so that's not true. And we're not wandering the streets because it's just too hot out, so we weren't worried about that. But they said if they smell alcohol on your breath, you're subject to arrest. And what else do they have? Yeah, 9 out of 10 women have AIDS. That's also the same thing they said about Rio de Janeiro. That was the one. Like I said, this is during the height of the war on terror, and there would be anti-American protests in the streets. So we had to be careful of that. No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't. It was just welcoming, accommodating. When we stayed in the hotel, the rule of the hotel, this is for the people who work there, the rule of the hotel was, and they did tell us this, we don't know if the person staying here is royalty. They have, royal families and stuff like that over there. The United Arab Emirates are like a state. So the United Arab States, essentially. They're called Emirates, but anyway. And those states are ruled by a governing body, and some of those are royalty, princes and whatnot. So the rule in the hotel was you don't know if the person that you're helping or serving is royalty. You don't know that. So you treat everybody as if they are royalty. And that was impressive. That was their standard for the guests that stayed in their hotel. Another quick story before we finish up here is we were staying in the Grand Hyatt in Dubai. Very nice hotel, 5 stars. It was 5 stars. I'm not just saying that. It was rated 5 stars. And I had a headache. We were hanging out in the piano lounge, which was awesome. This lady from Australia was just jamming to whatever we requested, and I paid $20 to have this lady from Australia sing me the Men at Work song, "The Land Down Under," and it was worth it. But I had a headache that night, and I couldn't get it to go away. So I talked to one of the people that worked in the hotel, and I was like, "Hey, man!" Oh no, I was walking through the lobby, and one of the people stopped me, and I said, "Excuse me, sir. How are you doing? How's your stay and everything?" Like I said, they're treating everybody as royalty. And I said to him, I was like, "You know what? To tell you the truth, I kind of have this headache. It's really bothering me." And he goes, "Oh, okay. I'll go get you some aspirin." And he takes off. I didn't tell him my name. I didn't tell him what room I was in. And I didn't tell him where I was going. He just took off. So about 15 minutes later, I'm sitting in this piano lounge with everybody, and this guy comes up and taps me on the shoulder and hands me a box. Yes, I was skeptical. Like I said, foreign port, they told us not to trust anybody, and I was skeptical. And this guy hands me a box, and I read the box, and it was aspirin, brand name, aspirin, cold and flu medicine. And I said to the guy, I'm sorry, but this is not what I need. I need a painkiller like ibuprofen or Tylenol. I need aspirin, not aspirin. And he says to me, oh, excuse me, sir, I'm so sorry. Takes the box and he leaves again. Comes back about 10 minutes later again with aspirin. And it was the same brand, but it was actually aspirin, acetaminophen, which is essentially Tylenol. And he gives it to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, how much do I owe you? And he told me there was no charge for it. He went and paid for it, either with his money or whatever. He went and got it for me and brought it to me, which was amazing. And I reached in my pocket, and I had the dirhams, which is the currency of the United Arab Emirates. And essentially, one dirham is a quarter. It's actually 27 cents, but regardless, if you look at it as if it's a quarter, 4 of them would be $1 and whatever. And I reached in my pocket and just had a handful of them and gave it to him. I think I paid him like a total of about $8 for this. And this guy was just happy as can be. And I was happy because now I got some painkillers and it actually helped my headache. The alcohol didn't help my headache, but I had some of that too. And that was my experience in Dubai and Jebel Ali. I don't know the extent of the damage. I will find out and try to get it in here. But yeah, that's Dubai. I do have other Dubai stories. A lot more craziness happened there, but this is, I guess you would call this the intro to Dubai, and it's also mostly about Jebel Ali, port there. And, you know, it was in the same 4-day stretch that we were there, but that's where I'm going to stop it for right now. So, catch you later.